This is a Jmix exclusive.
Yeah. Do you think Keefe lied to both you and Greg Kading because he flip-flops his story a lot? No. Okay, let's go back to that for a minute because we got to fly through the rest of this stuff, but I'm going to get to this real quick. I haven't talked about it a lot. Why did R.J. Bond interview Keith Davis? Why was it important for me to interview Keefe? What was that all about? Was it about getting back at Greg Kading? Jesse, have we talked about that a lot on the show? Have we talked much about it at all? All right.
No, we haven't.
You know it. You know the story. Here's the deal. My reason for wanting to interview Keith Davis was more of a curiosity to find out if he'd flip again, depending on who had the bigger carrot out there. He had already told Russell Poole one chain and one story, and that was all out there. Then he told Greg Kading that he lied, and he completely changed his story. So I thought, and then Greg Kading kind of threw him under the bus, didn't give him any money, didn't do anything for him at all, and he didn't like Greg Kading. But when I wrote him in prison, he said he didn't like Greg Kading, and I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I kind of wondered out loud if the guy wouldn't change his story because I was a documentary filmmaker, and he wanted to say it. So he told me he had a story. I wrote back to him. I said, well, if your story is Greg Kading's story, it's already been told. That story's already been done. You know, who cares? Greg Kading stole your story. So I'm not interested if you don't have a different story. And you know what he did? He showed up at IHOP with a different story. Okay, and that proved to me, and that was the litmus test to me, the guy can't be trusted further than he can be thrown, because depending on who he's talking to, you get a different story. Now, I don't know the story he told me was the right one, because it was kind of the story he told Russell Poole, or was the story he told Greg Kading the right one? Who knows? All I know is he should work at Waffle House because he waffles so much. And that was the reason I interviewed him.
But yeah, Keith Davis, and if you go back and I hate to plug it, but if you go back and re-listen to the Murder Rap confession and then listen to RJ's interview with him that's on this channel, Keith Davis answers in a bunch of grunts and yas. You can't understand anything the guy says. So when you really re-listen to that confession, especially in the Murder Rap one that I'm talking about specifically, he's being led in that, and all he's doing is doing a bunch of yas and grunts. And you can hear the same thing in RJ's conversation with him.
Jay Kazi asked, Jmix, RJ, what did you think of the Brian Bentley interview? Yeah, well, I mean, I in doing the research for Battle for Compton, I think we even had a clip from Brian Bentley in Battle for Compton. Brian Bentley has pretty much told the same story the entire time. He doesn't have much of a story to tell. He was Kevin Gaines' buddy. But you mean, as far as I'm concerned, the salient point there is that there were LAPD guys working for Death Row Records. LAPD was involved knee deep with Death Row Records, and there's some cover up going on with Death Row Records. I think that's been his story all along, and I tend to agree with it. So, I think he has some salient points there. Vansor said, Jmix and RJ, the confession letter was a dangerous gamble. No, the Pattons ratted on Little Half Dead and implicated themselves in hopes to get money because they owed a debt to Freeway Ricky Ross. Why did they back off? Jesse?
What was the question? Why didn't who back off?
Well, he said the confession letter was a dangerous gamble. No. Yeah, it was actually a pretty dangerous gamble. I mean, this was the thing. Now, this is why Saria's sister was involved with it, because it was a gamble, but they were hedging their bets. That's how come they knew how serious it was, because they didn't want to have it in their own handwriting where it could be tied back to them if they decided to change their minds or if they got threatened or pressured. They wanted the information out there. They had Saria's sister do it. They were going to do it and give it to Fox News because Fox News is paying money, and they wanted to put it out there and do that. Blatchford was originally going to interview them with that black silhouette screen and change their voice and do all that, like the A&E show did with our hooded friend who couldn't make an appearance tonight. He sent his regrets. But at the end of the day, they were going to do that kind of an interview, and when it didn't work out, they went and wrote that letter. But again, they wrote the letter and wanted to get the news information out there and still get paid for the information. They were hoping the letter would kind of suffice in lieu of. But even then, they were hedging their bets.
Well, I think the letter was a gamble to put in the movie. After it was leaked by the LAPD, I mean, and me and RJ talked about this in private, after it was leaked by the LAPD and slandered as the half-dead theory, and I've said this a million times, it's the Patton theory. It's a theory based on the Pattons and Reggie Wright and Sharifa Knight. It's not the half-dead theory. But it was painted that way, and me and RJ had conversations in private about whether to include it. I think that there's enough evidence just the way it sits against Reggie Wright Jr. that you don't have to include it. But the thing about the letter, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, is you can't disprove it. I've tried, and I fought a couple different points on it, but every interview I had and every breadcrumb trail I went down led right back to the letter and it being verified.
Yeah, I mean, and yes, it was a risk to the Pattons. But what's your alternative? You're gonna try to get money, however you're gonna try to get money. And if that's all you have to sell is information, that's what you do. Ask any confidential, reliable informant on the police department. Half these snitches do what they do because they got to feed their kids, they got to pay their rent, they got to do what they got to do. It's not glorious, and they probably don't like doing it, and there's risk to it. But that's what they do to try to earn a couple of bucks, and that's what the promise of Fox. I'm not saying Fox was telling them they were going to pay them, but that's generally what happened. People expected that the news would pay a lot of money to break a story about the murder of Tupac before. I think when Chris Blatchford didn't follow up with it ultimately because they bailed on their interview, and Coach Blatchford said, "F you and the horse you rode in on." I think that at that point, the Pattons, they just kind of walked away from it, and that was the whole value of the age.
They got spooked. They tried to do a gun exchange or drop a gun off, and they got spooked. So people got to keep in mind, yes, it was a bold risk, but they didn't fully take it. They initiated it, but they didn't follow through, and that says something also.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. I have to read it. Maysol said, did Tupac ever meet C-Style? Yes, that's affirmative. C-Style met Tupac back in the Above the Rim days. Hey all, it's Jmix here, and I want to thank everybody that took the time to watch the video. If you liked it, go ahead and throw it a like, maybe even a comment down below. And if you really like my content, check out my Patreon. The link is down below. For $1 a month, you get all the live streams, unedited as soon as they happen, plus interviews in advance and other bonus content. The link is in the description. If not, you guys could always watch one of the videos to the side of me. See you on the next upload. One love, everybody.